Hey guys, I have here an order of 32 EVE 230 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries from Shenzhen Basen. I ordered these batteries several months ago. I was ready to order another set of the EVE 280 amp hour batteries, but it was right around the time where they were out of stock, and then they came back in stock, but the price had gone up significantly such that it really wasn't the best deal around anymore. And at the time, Basen had a large quantity of these 230 amp hour cells. These batteries cost me $67 each, or $2,144. After the shipping costs, the taxes, and any transactional fees were included, the total came to $2,709. And that calculates out to $84.65 per battery, or $115 per kilowatt hour. Now, I ordered these batteries on May 3rd, and they were delivered on June 20th, so it was just under 2 months, which is pretty fast in my opinion. That's a pretty good deal. That was sea freight, so it's the low and slow method. So today I'm just going to show you what I got. We'll do a little bit of testing. I'm going to build a small 4S battery pack like I did before, and just do some capacity testing and some verification of them. And then hopefully I can get these set up in a 16S2P configuration as soon as possible, because I really need to get these batteries into service instead of having them sit around here. Alright, so a close-up look at these batteries here. You can see we have the positive and negative terminal. All of the original QR codes are intact, located next to the vent where they are supposed to be. Another thing I'm checking is just how close together these cells sit. So you can see most of them are very close, one on top of the other. That indicates that there is no bulging of the cell. This one has a little bit of space in there. It's not really too bad. Most of them overall do not have any space between batteries. So one thing that's different about these cells, as you may have noticed already, is that there is a welded stud on the aluminum terminal. So these cells come from the manufacturer without threads or anything bored into the terminal. So it's up to the person selling them to either bore some threads, or in this case, my preferred method, they actually welded a stud on. This welded stud will allow us to get a much stronger connection with a greater torque without risk of damaging the cell itself. Looking at the front of the battery, we can see the same label as we had before. 3.2 volts lithium iron phosphate cell, 230 amp hour capacity. When they tested this, the voltage was resting at 3.29 volts and had an internal resistance, or an IR, of 0.25 milliohms. The other side is pretty much just blank. It's your typical blue wrapped cell. There is a black insulator on the bottom. So I carefully inspected every single one of these cells, all sides, the bottom, the top, the terminals, the vents, everything, the QR codes. I have 31 of 32 cells in pristine condition, and unfortunately I do have one cell that is damaged a bit. So as you can see, this cell on the side with the label here, you can see there is a small ding in the cell. It's not really that bad. I don't think it's terrible. I don't really know what to make of it. It just looks like a small ding. It's not punctured. It doesn't look at risk to be punctured. I'd really prefer not to use it, to be honest, but then I only have 31 cells, and that's not enough for a 32 cell battery bank. So I might just use it until I have a chance to order a spare, and then once I have a spare I can replace it. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's too bad. What do you guys think? I know some of you have received similar cells. Have you used these, or? So just like my 280 amp hour batteries, I am not planning to test all 32 of these. I'm going to pull 4 of these at random. We'll build a 12 volt pack and use that for testing. Then I'll build the final battery pack and test it as a whole, again, just like I did with the 280 amp hour batteries. So we'll grab this one, this one, this one, and this one. 4 completely random batteries. All 4 of these batteries are labeled with a voltage of 3.29 volts and an internal resistance of 0.25 milliohms. So I got this new battery tester thing. This is the RC3563 that is supposed to be fairly accurate for internal resistance testing. 3.29 volts and 0.12 milliohms. 3.29 volts and 0.11 milliohms. 3.29 volts and 0.14 milliohms. 3.29 volts and 0.12 milliohms. So the next thing I want to do is verify their weights. According to the manufacturer's datasheet, they should be 4.11 kilograms plus or minus 100 grams. So I gotta switch this to grams. There we go. We got 4.16, 4.15, 4.17, and 4.17. So we check out good there as well. So the next thing I want to do is just double check once again the polarity of these batteries, because believe it or not, I have heard some people say that they received prismatic batteries, not from Basen, just in general, and the labels on the top were put on backwards and the polarities were mixed up. And it would be catastrophic if these were connected backwards and a short circuit resulted. So we're just going to confirm that the plus and the minus are where they should be. So we have 3.28, 3.28, 3.28, and 3.28. Now we would know if the polarity is reversed on this particular meter because we'd have a negative symbol. So you see, if I intentionally connect them backwards, we have a negative there that indicates the polarity is wrong. So we know the polarities are good to go on these batteries. So here's a quick look at the hardware these batteries came with. So we've got the bus bars here. They're very different than the 280 amp hour bus bars. There's actually, I don't know if you can see this here, there's two pieces of metal, two separate bus bars, one on top of the other. This is actually good because this allows this bus bar to flex a little bit without putting stress on the terminals. However, I do personally prefer the bus bars with the 280 amp hour cells. And then we also have a pile of M6 serrated flange nuts. Now I did order 16 extra bus bars because that was the mistake I had made before. You need more bus bars when you're building a 16S2P as opposed to a 32S or something like that. Alright, so now I'm ready to add the series connections. So I'm going to use this as the main negative, which means I'll need a series jumper up here, a series jumper here, and a series jumper here. As I lay these bus bars down, I'm being extremely careful where I put them and also double checking the polarities as I go. So I'm going to loosely thread on a nut to each stud. I don't want to tighten it too much yet because I still have to put the BMS leads on. Now these cells are really supposed to be under some sort of compression, just to keep them from expanding during high charge and discharge rates. And for the small test we're going to do, I don't know if that matters or not, but I still want to hold them together a little bit just in case. So I use this white cutting mat. It's 1/32 inch thick, and I put this between the cells just to keep them from potentially rubbing through. And I'm going to put two pieces of hard cutting board here at the ends and wrap it around with a large zip tie. It's not the best way to build a battery pack, but again, this is a test setup. This is the BMS I'll be using for this test. This is a 12 volt 4S 150 amp BMS by JBD, and this is from Current Connected. I'm going to have an entire video coming up probably in a couple of weeks here with more details on how this works and doing some thorough testing of it. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to get it connected to this battery so we can test ourselves. And this BMS came with some very long, nice balance leads here, so I just soldered on a 1/4 inch ring terminal on each of the leads. So you'll see we have one red, three white, and one black. And we're going to start with the black lead, which is going to go on the main negative of our battery pack. Going to take my connector here and grab the first white wire, and that's going to go to the first series connection. The second white wire will go to the second series connection, and I think you get the idea. The third wire goes to the third connection until we're left with the red wire, which will go on the main positive. Alright, so I got my BMS connected up down here, and basically I have the black lead coming off of the main negative. It goes down to the B- on the BMS. On the top here I connected a second balance lead, so each terminal has two leads coming off, and this is so I can plug in my iCharger X6 balance charger. Since I did not top balance these batteries, I need to, I want to use a balance charger just to make sure they are as balanced as possible. And then over here in the main positive I just have an empty lug with no wire in it, where I clipped on my positive. It's going to come from the iCharger X6, and the iCharger negative is down here on the BMS. So now I can plug in my BMS balance leads to the iCharger, and we can see I now instantly have voltages of all four cells, and then I can plug in the main battery. I'm going to go to lithium iron phosphate charge, 4S 10 amps, and I have it set to slow balance. That way it will balance them as much as possible. And this is going to take quite a while because this is only going to put out about 8 to 9 amps because my power supply is only 120 watts. Alright, so these cells are pretty much done balancing here. It's stopped a couple of times now, and I just restarted it at a 0.5 amp rate. And the cells are all within 2 millivolts of each other. And one thing I did notice is even though I have these cells zip tied together, they did expand a little bit. Look at this gap between them. Like that gap wasn't there when I first started. And there's a small gap over here now too. So, I mean, I knew the zip tie was not the right way to secure these and prevent them from expanding, but at the same time, this was only an 8.5 amp charge rate. And when I tested my 280 amp hours, I did not secure them at all. So this is quite interesting. It'll be interesting to see if the gap is the same once they're discharged at the lower state of charge or not. Going to use this standard space heater I use on many of my tests. This will pull approximately 975 watts on low, which will be approximately a 0.33 rate discharge. And this BMS is programmed to disconnect when any one cell reaches 2.50 volts. And the same display as usual, we have voltage, amperage, wattage, amp hours, and watt hours. Additionally, up top I have my IDST BATGO display plugged into my second balance lead so we can see the voltage of each individual cell. I'm hoping I can catch this at the end of the discharge test if I'm paying attention. So here we go. And it seems to have settled right around 940 watts. So we'll be back when this reaches low voltage disconnect. Alright, so we're nearing the end of our test here. You can see we're at 2.8 or so volts with a voltage differential of 68 millivolts. So it's only going to be another minute or two here. And we're sitting at a whopping 237 amp hours. These are pretty good batteries. Now these batteries do feel a little bit warm to the touch. So about halfway throughout the test I stuck both temperature sensors to the side of the battery. There's one here and there's another one down in there. So looking at the app here we could see sensors 2 and 3 are sitting around 37 to 38 degrees Celsius. It's about 15 degrees Celsius above ambient temperature here in the garage, so that's not too bad. 240 amp hours out of a 230 amp hour battery. That's quite a bit more than the rated capacity. That comes out to 104.3%. Alright, so looking once again at the gap between cells, you can see there's still a little bit there, but it's not as bad as it was. And one thing I noticed too is that this is significantly more loose. So when I was looking at this the first time at full state of charge, I couldn't move some of this stuff, and now it's very loose. So I think it just goes to show you how important the compression is on these cells to prevent them from expanding and contracting in a way such that it degrades performance of the battery over time, like over the long run of the life cycle of the battery. However, let's take a look at some of the things I don't like about the batteries. I am a huge fan of these welded studs. This is so much better than having to worry about stripping aluminum threads out. If you take a look at the amount of metal we have here, it's not much. There's not much contact area there. So when you put your bus bar down on this stud, bus bar does not sit flat in this terminal because of the weld and this little lip here by the stud. So there's not a whole lot of contact area. So this tells me, particularly in a high drain application, that this could likely heat up quite a bit, and you're probably going to see a lot of current passing through the stud down into the bus bar versus going straight up. You know, because current's going to take the path of least resistance here. Now the second thing I wanted to comment on is that because it's two very thin pieces of metal, I can no longer drill and tap this like I did with the 280 bus bars. So if I put down my ring terminal here and then put on my flange nut, you know, I'm concerned about the contact area of this stud, but now I have to worry about the space between this nut and this bus bar due to this ring terminal. I haven't figured out how exactly I'm going to attach my balance leads yet. I might end up drilling a small hole like around here or somewhere so I can put a very small screw in with a nut on the bottom. I am extremely satisfied with these cells, the fact that they perform 10 amp hours over their rated capacity. I mean, it is unfortunate too that one of them has a ding in it, but you know, I'll get that figured out. Now I ordered these cells back in May, so I don't know what Basen's current stock of these are. However, I will leave a link in the description of where I purchased these. Additionally, I want to thank Current Connected for sponsoring this BMS. I will leave a link to this BMS as well. In an upcoming video, probably a month or so, we're going to do quite a bit of testing on this BMS and show you how to get it connected, the app, and everything that goes into that. I sort of did these videos out of order a little bit because I really need to get these EVE batteries into service and finish my conversion over to lithium iron phosphate. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button down below, and thank you for watching.